You're in the car, alone. Maybe parked in the driveway, maybe still in the parking lot after a long day. A song comes on. Or maybe it's not even a song. Maybe it's a thought, a memory, something someone said hours ago that didn't hit you until just now. And suddenly your throat tightens, your vision blurs, your chin starts to tremble and you clench your jaw trying to stop it. But it comes anyway. The tears roll down and you sit there, breathing in short little bursts, gripping the steering wheel like it's the only solid thing left in the world. And when it's over, maybe 2 minutes later, maybe 10, you wipe your face, check the mirror, and walk inside like nothing happened. You don't tell anyone. You might even feel embarrassed. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that crying is a breakdown, a loss of control, a sign that something is wrong with you. But what if that's completely backwards? What if crying isn't a malfunction at all? Most people think tears are just the body's way of expressing sadness, an overflow valve for when emotions get too big. They see crying as passive, as something that happens to you when you can't hold it together anymore. That's the story we've been told. That's not the story your body is actually telling, because crying isn't a collapse, it's a process. A highly specific, biologically orchestrated process that your body initiates on purpose, with precision, for reasons that go far beyond emotion. And once you understand what's really happening behind those tears, you'll never look at crying the same way again. In the early 1980s, a biochemist named Dr. William Frey at the University of Minnesota conducted an experiment that would quietly reshape our understanding of human tears. He collected 2 types of tears from volunteers. The first kind were reflex tears, the ones your eyes produce when you chop an onion or get hit by a gust of wind. The second kind were emotional tears, the ones triggered by sadness, grief, frustration, or even joy. Then he analyzed their chemical composition. What he found was extraordinary. Emotional tears contain significantly higher concentrations of stress hormones, specifically leucine and enkephalin, an endorphin, and adrenocorticotropic hormone, a key molecule in the body's stress response chain. Reflex tears had none of this. They were essentially saline, salt water doing a mechanical job. But emotional tears were carrying something out of the body. They were chemically different because they were functionally different. Your body wasn't just releasing water from your eyes. It was releasing stress in liquid form through a pathway that no pill, no breathing exercise, no meditation app can replicate in quite the same way. And if this is already starting to shift something in the way you think about your own body, stay with me. Because what comes next goes deeper than you'd expect. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and keep watching. This is one of those videos you'll want to see all the way through. But here's where it gets really interesting. The psychological dimension of crying reveals something most people never consider. Crying is one of the only emotional responses that simultaneously activates and then deactivates the stress system. When you begin to cry, your sympathetic nervous system fires up. That's your fight or flight system. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense. But within moments, something shifts. The parasympathetic nervous system takes over. That's the rest and digest branch. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens, your muscles soften. It's not random. It's a built-in neurological sequence. Crying doesn't just express distress, it resolves it. Your body uses the act of crying as a bridge between chaos and calm, a controlled detonation of emotional pressure that leaves the nervous system in a more regulated state than before it started. Now let's look at the chemical layer. When emotional tears fall, they carry with them cortisol, the hormone most associated with chronic stress. But that's not all. The act of sobbing, the rhythmic contraction of your diaphragm and chest muscles, stimulates the vagus nerve. This is the longest cranial nerve in your body, running from your brainstem all the way down to your abdomen. When the vagus nerve is activated, it triggers a release of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that directly lowers heart rate and promotes a feeling of calm. At the same time, the emotional release of crying prompts the brain to produce oxytocin and endogenous opioids, your body's natural painkillers. This is why, after a hard cry, many people describe a sensation of lightness, almost like a fog lifting. It's not poetic exaggeration, it's pharmacology. Your body just administered its own internal cocktail of relief, and the delivery method was tears. And then there's the evolutionary layer, which might surprise you most. Why would humans evolve the ability to cry emotionally at all? No other species produces emotional tears the way we do. Other animals vocalize distress, yes. They whimper, howl, call out. But the act of producing tears specifically linked to emotional states appears to be uniquely human. Evolutionary biologists believe this developed as a social signaling mechanism. In early human communities, crying served as a visible, unmistakable signal to others that an individual needed help, was in pain, or was not a threat. Tears blur your vision, making you physically vulnerable. They're nearly impossible to fake convincingly, and they trigger an empathic response in the observer. When you see someone cry, your own brain activates mirror neuron systems that create a shadow of that emotion inside you. Tears evolved not just to regulate the crier's internal state, but to recruit the support of the group. It was a survival tool, a biological SOS written in salt and water on the surface of your face. Now here's something that seems almost impossible at first glance. If crying is so beneficial, if it regulates stress, releases toxins, activates the parasympathetic system, and recruits social support, then why do some people feel worse after crying? This isn't a fringe experience. A study published in 2008 in the journal Current Directions in Psychological Science by researchers Jonathan Rottenberg, Lauren Bilsma, and Ad Vingerhoots examined over 3,000 crying episodes across multiple countries. What they found challenged the universal assumption that crying always helps. Roughly a third of participants reported no improvement in mood after crying, and about 10% actually felt worse. How is that possible if the biology is so clearly designed for relief? The answer lies not in the tears themselves, but in the context surrounding them. The researchers discovered that the emotional outcome of crying depends heavily on two factors: whether the person received social support during or after the episode, and whether the crying led to any resolution or new understanding of the situation. When people cried alone, with no one to witness it and no shift in perspective, the body still went through the chemical process, cortisol was still released, the vagus nerve was still activated, but the psychological loop wasn't closed. The nervous system ramped up, initiated the cry, began the discharge, but without the social or cognitive component to complete the cycle, the system stalled mid-process. It's like starting a reboot and pulling the plug halfway through. The hardware tried to reset, but the software didn't finish updating. This is why crying in the arms of someone you trust feels profoundly different from crying alone in a bathroom stall at work. The biology is the same, the outcome is not. Because your body evolved to cry in the presence of others. The tears were always meant to be seen. And I want to pause here just for a second. I know this voice sounds like AI, and it is, but behind this channel, there is a real person. My name is Fernando, and I genuinely appreciate you being here right now, giving your time and attention to something that matters. I hope you are blessed beyond measure, always. Now let's keep going, because there's more your body wants you to understand. There's another dimension to this that rarely gets discussed. The type of crying matters. Researchers distinguish between three categories: quiet weeping, full sobbing, and what's sometimes called protest crying, the loud, almost primal vocal expression of grief or frustration. Each of these engages the body differently. Quiet weeping produces tears and mild parasympathetic activation, but doesn't strongly engage the diaphragm or vagus nerve. Full sobbing, with its deep convulsive breathing, provides the most complete physiological reset. The rhythmic contraction and release of the chest and abdominal muscles during sobbing is almost identical to certain patterns used in breathwork and vagal toning exercises. Your body, in its ancient wisdom, essentially invented its own breathing therapy millions of years before any human wellness trend gave it a name. And protest crying, the kind where you cry out loud, uses the vocal cords and larynx in ways that further stimulate vagal tone and release muscular tension stored in the throat and jaw, areas where emotional stress accumulates most. This is why sometimes the cries that feel the most uncontrolled are actually the most healing. Your body isn't losing composure, it's performing maintenance. There's also a fascinating gender dimension to this. Research by Vingerhoots and others has shown that women cry on average 30 to 64 times per year, while men cry between 6 and 17 times. But this gap isn't purely cultural, although social conditioning plays an enormous role. Prolactin, a hormone present in significantly higher levels in women, has been shown to lower the emotional threshold for crying. Meanwhile, testosterone, more abundant in men, appears to inhibit it. This means the biological deck is stacked differently, and the cultural expectation that men should suppress tears adds a second layer of suppression on top of the chemical one. The health consequences of this are not trivial. Chronic suppression of emotional crying has been linked to increased levels of cortisol, higher blood pressure, greater risk of cardiovascular events, and even weakened immune function. When you swallow your tears over and over, your body doesn't just forget the emotion. It stores it in your muscles, in your blood chemistry, in the low hum of inflammation that sits beneath the surface of an apparently composed life. Your body was designed to cry, and when you don't let it, the cost is not just emotional, it's physical. And then there's the tear itself. Under a microscope, dried emotional tears look completely different from basal tears or reflex tears. Photographer Rose-Lynn Fisher documented this in a project called The Topography of Tears, capturing microscopic images of different types of tears. Tears of grief looked like aerial views of barren landscapes. Tears of joy resembled crystalline patterns, almost like snowflakes. Tears of laughter had their own distinct architecture. Every tear tells a chemical story. Every tear has a fingerprint. The composition changes depending on what you're feeling, which means your body doesn't just cry generically, it cries specifically. It formulates a unique chemical release tailored to the exact emotional state you're in. This isn't a crude overflow valve, it's a precision instrument. So now let's bring this back to where we started. You, in that car, gripping the wheel, feeling the heat behind your eyes and the tightness in your throat. That moment when the tears broke through wasn't a failure. It was your body executing one of the most sophisticated self-repair mechanisms it has. It was flushing cortisol through your tear ducts, activating your vagus nerve through the rhythm of your sobs, lowering your heart rate through parasympathetic engagement, releasing endorphins and oxytocin to ease the pain, and sending a visible, ancient signal to the world that said, I need connection. I need to be seen right now. Every part of that experience was designed, calibrated, purposeful. You weren't breaking down. You were being put back together. And that changes everything. It changes how you respond the next time it happens. Instead of clenching, you breathe. Instead of apologizing, you allow. Instead of wiping the tears away before anyone sees, you let them fall, knowing that each one is carrying something out of your body that doesn't belong there anymore. You stop treating crying as the enemy and start recognizing it as the ally it always was. And maybe, just maybe, you stop judging yourself for being human. Because crying isn't the sound of someone falling apart. It's the sound of a body that still knows how to heal itself if you let it. The next time you feel the tears coming, don't fight them. Don't swallow them. Don't turn away. Let your biology do what it spent millions of years learning to do. Let it clean you out, slow you down, and bring you back to center. You've earned that. Your body already knows the way. If this video made you see your own tears differently, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. Hit the like button if you think more people need to understand this, and subscribe so we can keep going deeper together. Because in the next video, we're going to explore something most people experience every single day but never question. What really happens to your brain when you can't stop overthinking, and why your mind gets louder the moment you try to make it quiet. Trust me, you're going to want to see that one.